When I lost my dad, I actually ended up in hospital. I was not fine and normal. I'd be sitting at my desk and it used to feel like my teeth were falling out of my mouth. As we know, stress is very physical. It's the biggest proxy killer globally.
How do you pick up your pieces? Where do you start from?
What I can say is
Bianca is a former city professional turned health tech founder of HumanOS, global speaker on sustainable high performance, and wellbeing expert.
there's 5 stages of burnout. Phase 1 is honeymoon. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're excited, you're motivated.
So it's a good stress.
Exactly. It's like, how do we make the honeymoon stage sustainable? Phase 4 is burnout, and then phase 5 is basically hospitalization. And that's going to take you years to come back from.
How do you prevent burnout?
And we live in a time now where everyone wants to go and jump in an ice bath, take the next supplement, whatever it might be, instead of just doing what is actually going to really move the needle on your health, which is doing the basics, doing it consistently, doing it repeatedly, and it's boring. And so the first step before we can start to fix, I hate that word, or heal or repair the brain is
Hello, Bianca. Welcome to the Adaptive Times.
thank you so much for having me.
I've been dying to have you on the podcast because I relate so much to your story. And I've been through burnout through many years ago, and it became physical. I then lost my dad last year, so grief knocked me out from an identity perspective, and I had to pick up my pieces.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I want us to talk about today. It's like, I guess, how do you prevent burnout, and how do you pick up your pieces when things become mental, becomes physical?
Yeah.
So, but first, who is Bianca?
So this is actually a question I've been thinking a lot about recently, because we so often go into like who we are for work, but is that actually who we are? We are so many more things. So I would say Bianca is and has always been a very inquisitive, curious, slightly rebellious, kind, and loving person.
Love it.
So my background's in psychology. I graduated from university with dreams of being a clinical psychologist. About 3 weeks after I graduated, found out my dad had a terminal illness and didn't have very long to live. At that point, we were told 3 months. As a result of that, I had to get a job very quickly. And so I started my career in tech sales in a very male-dominated environment. Not only was I in this new career, in a career I never had planned on being in an industry, and even in a location I didn't ever generally have plans of being in, I was also dealing with my dad passing away
with a grief.
and not knowing how long he had. Did he have those 3 months, or what he ended up having, which was, I think, about 2 or 3 years. So I started my career and just was on this mission for my dad. I wanted to buy him his health. If I couldn't do that, I was going to buy him a Ferrari, and I was just solely motivated by money. So very quickly was sort of working ridiculous hours, ridiculous days, just throwing everything into this job on this mission for him. My health started deteriorating during that time. When I lost my dad, I actually ended up in hospital through stress-related illnesses. So it was hard for them to diagnose it. It went on for months and months and months, potentially even longer. And all the tests just kept coming back fine and normal. But I was not fine and normal. I'd be sitting at my desk and it used to feel like my teeth were falling out of my mouth. It felt like someone was taking a screwdriver down the back of my head. I'd get random pains in my hands and my arms. I couldn't sleep lying down because my acid reflux was so intrusive. I could no longer digest food anymore. So I was in a lot of mental and physical pain. Eventually, sort of just kept fighting with the doctors, got endoscopies, went down that route, and they saw the sort of damage to my stomach. So then that sort of led me to take a step back from the corporate world and really go on my own
Nice.
healing journey, I guess, for want of a better phrase, and really just try to get my mental, physical health back on track. And I didn't necessarily do that in the most healthy way either. I did it with the best tools I had available
Because
to
you
myself.
don't know. Yeah.
Of course, I
no
don't
one
know.
prepares you for it.
Hindsight's
how to deal
beautiful,
with it.
experience is beautiful. We just have the tools that we have in our toolbox at that time.
Yeah.
And so sort of went from one extreme to the other, and then I was vegan and I was sober, and I was living out of tuk-tuk called Tina in Sri Lanka, and I was living in Bali before it was cool. I went on this whole sort of journey with that, but did get my health back on track. And over the past sort of 12 years, it's been something that I've really made sure I prioritize and cherish. I always say health is the crown the well man wears on his head that only the poor man can see. Poorly man can see. And so in answer to the question then, so if we fast forward to now, I've got around 13,000 coaching hours. When I came back from that trip, I added to my education and my knowledge in human psychology, behaviour psychology, performance, wellbeing. Started off personal training, then moved into more holistic coaching, then into sort of mindset coaching, personal development coaching. Coached billionaire CEOs, international rugby players, Hollywood celebrities, everything in between. And then sort of the past 8 years or so, been working in the corporate space, delivering talks, designing wellbeing strategies. 3 years ago, set up my startup, HumanOS, which is a sustainable high-performance platform on a mission to democratise coaching in the workplace. And then we've built this gamified behavioural technology platform that helps individuals actually understand their health and helps organisations understand their people. And so that's sort of the journey that I'm on now, and doing cool things like this as part of that.
Awesome. Well, that's a hell of a story. And transformation and different identities that you jump through it.
Yeah.
Let me start from the first one. Obviously, the while you were talking, one of the things that struck me out, when you were dealing with grief and you went on this traveling 1 year gap, you know how from the outside it might look like, oh, she's living the life. Every person is different.
Yeah.
So I guess if something like this hits you, if you lose a loved one, we're all going to do at some point, hopefully very late, right? But we will. How do you show up? And do you even have to show up? Like, versus the external perception, I guess.
So I think there's two pathways we can go down with this question. One pathway is a lot easier and a lot quicker to answer, which is from the outlooker looking in. Whatever you're going through in life, whether it's grief, whether it's like an actual loss of a loved one, whether it's the loss of a breakup, whether it's caregiving responsibilities, whether it's financial worries, whether it's health-wise, whatever it may be, like we're all going through so much, and everyone is juggling so much, and different people will go through things at different times because there is no chronological order to life. So I do believe it's really important that we try and be a bit more human again, because I do believe we're losing that ability in this technologically driven world that's moving so quickly. The levels of empathy and patience and understanding, we don't actually know what people are going through, and therefore we shouldn't judge or compare, and to lead with kindness. On the other side of that, how do we show up? Well, grief, there is no pathway to grief. There is no two people will feel grief in the same way. Grief has very physical impacts on the brain and on the body. The brain recognises that loss the same way it may compute an amputation. It recognises something is missing. And so it's a very physical thing. And the idea, I would not want to sit here and say this is how you must show up, because what worked for me wouldn't work for you, wouldn't work for the next. What I can say is what I wish I had done sooner was give myself the space and the grace and the compassion and the kindness, because even though I took myself physically out of an environment and I went traveling, I wasn't necessarily kind to myself in that time. I wasn't necessarily healing. But then again, who says I had to? I was in a lot of shock. I didn't really know what was going on. And so there's all these elements to it. So it's really just about trying to be kind to yourself, trying to be compassionate. Some days it might be just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Some days it might be you're feeling a bit braver or you're feeling a bit more capable. There's no right or wrong to it.
Yeah, it's very personal.
Yeah. They say you should make no major life decisions in the first 12 months.
Fair. Well, I'm also falling into that category that I didn't follow that advice.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know many people that do follow that rule. I can understand why it is a rule. I think it is very hard because your whole perception of what is important changes.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't it? When you go through grief and loss of someone you love, it's so earth-shatteringly painful.
Yeah.
And it puts a perspective on life that you've never had before. So, of course, you're going to view it differently and think differently. And we don't want to be impulsive as such.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy for people to look at my story. Like, if you think I've just upped and left everything and that's what I'm promoting other people to do. Well, that simply isn't the case because actually now I work more hours than I've ever worked. I'm more stressed than I ever have been.
Yeah.
I feel the pressure more, arguably, than I ever did in that role. So this isn't about like a black or white, you have to be traveling the world and finding yourself, or you have to be in this corporate world going up the ladder. Like life doesn't work like that. We as human beings want to be black or white, but we have to be grey. We have to operate in the grey. And so when you're going through grief and you're trying to understand what's going to serve you best in that time, I would advise, and I wasn't particularly good at this, is instead of that black or white thinking, actually think of the grey. What's the grey in here? What's my way that's going to help me through this in a way that I need?
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm now in probably 8 months. So I didn't follow the 12-month advice because I've just quit my job. By the time that airs, I'm not going to be at Google anymore. And that is because of the identity shattered crisis I had after what happened. So I want us to stay a little bit on that because I don't think anyone of us knows how to navigate it.
No.
Right? So for me, it was a lot about like I was prioritizing my financial security before and the fun and I had fun. I like my job. I like the company. It wasn't about the company.
Yeah.
But it was about like I need to reconnect with myself. Like my biggest impact from the grief is that I lost the connection to myself. I cannot even decide what to eat. Like I feel like I'm not listening to myself anymore. And in an environment that I need to show up 8-10 hours a day and do stuff that I have to do, there is not so much room for the stuff that give me energy, so that it's purely for me to go through that identity reshape and re-energizing phase of my life, and that's where the decision came. But if you're going through that, whether it's on the back of grief or another identity shifting event, like where do you start? What I guess, how do I go about unraveling my identity, or how do I go about rebuilding it or finding what it is for me?
I mean, it's a beautiful question. And again, it's going to be different. Grief, we were in a similar situation that we were very close to our fathers and we loved them and we idolized them. For some, they may not have that connection to whoever they've lost. They then may feel guilt for not having that connection. They may hold shame. Like there's so many emotions that are going to come up that are going to really make you question yourself, question who you are, question what's important, question what you want. So in some which way or form, it's going to make you question your identity.
And it can be other events as well. So I'm thinking like being in tech, the big layoffs that happened 3 years ago, you know how many people had their identity associated with a company and suddenly they were locked out the next day and you're like, what am I doing now? That is also an identity shattering event because you're like, what am I doing now? I was not planning for this. So I think it goes beyond grief to generalize it. It's like when an external event forces a change you were not ready for.
Yeah. Okay, so again, let's break it into two parts. Firstly, in your sort of personal situation, for someone who's gone through loss.
Yeah.
It's really important to remember, and this can go on for months, it can go on for longer than a month. In my case, it's certainly for maybe even like a year, maybe 18 months, where you just go into survival mode.
Yeah.
world feels really unstable. And so when that happens, you are desperate to try and find some form of stability, but everything can feel really unsafe. Death particularly, because we have this innate sense that we are these infinite human beings and actually we're superhumans, and until there's an example, it happens either to us or to someone around us where we actually go and experience death, that we suddenly like,
we don't think about
I'm actually not superhuman. It's often the first time we think that. We're like, oh, I can actually be hurt. I can feel pain. This is new to me. This is scary. So again, that's going to make you question your identity. From a psychological perspective, you are in such survival mode of just, there is so much cortisol, there is so much pain, there is, you're really in fight or flight, that the brain is going to then shut down all the other areas of the brain that are outside of that. So your prefrontal cortex, your logic, your emotion, your decision making, it's not working anymore.
It's not working properly.
So exactly to your point, when you're going into the workplace then and you're struggling to do your job, or you're struggling to find energy for things you once had energy for, well, yes, of course, because you're in survival mode. So your brain is physically starting to shut off all the parts of the brain that aren't going to, what it believes, directly increase your chance of surviving. So you also have to think about what's actually going on from a brain chemistry perspective. And that's why it's also really important to have that compassion to yourself, because your brain is just trying to do that one thing it knows to do, which is protect you. It might not feel like it is, because you're like, why can't I do this job? Or why don't I have this energy? Or why have I forgot this thing? But it's because your brain's actually going, well, what's going to keep you alive right now?
I want to go back to, which I think a lot of people relate. So,
hey, it's Angeliki and Kali. If you're enjoying watching this, please hit the subscribe button.
Two things that a lot of people ask me when I started talking about, we're going to talk about grief, burnout, and everything. The first one is whether it's burnout or whether it's grief or whether it's other shocks to life, right? Often, when your mental health suffers, it will become physical, like in your story, right? The stomach, the endoscopies. I had the same, not from grief, many years ago from burnout, right? How do you pick up your pieces? Where do you start from when it becomes physical? Like, it seems you're so deep into that it's hard to get yourself out. So, I mean, obviously, maybe a therapist, a coach, get to the professionals, but what can you do?
Course. I mean, that's a luxury though, right? Let's be honest.
Fair. So that's why. What can you do?
So firstly, there's 5 stages of burnout.
Okay. Tell me.
Phase 1 is honeymoon. See if I still remember this. I should remember this. Phase 1 is honeymoon. Phase 2 is the early onset of stress. Phase 3 is chronic stress. Phase 4 is burnout, and then phase 5 is habitual burnout. So the honeymoon phase is exactly what it sounds like. You're excited, you're motivated, you want to go over and above on everything you do. It's a new job, or it's a new relationship, or it's a new hobby, and you're not sustainable about your energy. You throw too much into everything, and ultimately you end up exhausted.
Okay.
So that's sort of the first stage. So really, when we're looking at burnout, it's like, how do we make the honeymoon stage sustainable?
Okay.
Now, not every day we're going to be happy. Not every day we're going to be skipping into work. Not every day we're going to wake up and want to jump out of bed. But the majority of days, we're going to feel like we have meaning and fulfillment and purpose. We're going to feel energized in what we're doing.
So the honeymoon phase is a good stress.
Exactly. And stress, there can be good stress. It's a double-edged sword. You need stress. You need stress to motivate you to get out of bed, to go to the gym, to do well in work, to hold relationships, X, Y, and forth. And then double-edged sword, on the other side of that, it's the biggest proxy killer globally. It's at the basic cause of 80% of all human illness and disease. As we know, stress is very physical, and we'll come on to that. So there's an awareness piece here. And you get early onset of stress. So this might be things like forgetfulness, irritation, noticing less energy, maybe a few physical symptoms.
Okay.
Then you get the stress develops and you go into phase 3, and then this is when it starts to turn more physical. So It could be stomach problems. It could be migraines. It could be chronic bad throat. Like everyone's body is slightly different. So I say like the canary in the coal mine. So everyone has a different canary that will start singing.
Yeah.
And canaries are what they used to use in mining to let them know they were running out of oxygen.
Yeah.
So what's your canary? And everyone will have one. So it's about understanding that and
your
listening
weak
to
link.
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
And understanding, okay, I'm pushing it a bit too much now. Then we have burnout, which is when your body's like, enough is enough, basically. Like chronic illness, chronic pain, low energy, day-to-day tasks have basically become really challenging, if not impossible. But then habitual burnout is basically hospitalization.
Okay.
And that's going to take you years to come back from.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of graph.
Okay.
And so when people say, "Oh, I'm burnt out," or "I'm through burnout," it's like,
are you
just very stressed?
Yeah.
So we have to also, I think, be very careful with that term.
Yeah.
Because actual burnout is not something that is easy to recover from.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, it's like a therapy session. I'm trying to think where I was now that you're saying the stages. I think it was probably 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Because I did have like annual endoscopies, pills for my stomach for years, probably back-to-back things. So I think I was at that point of 3 or 4, but not at the point that I cannot recover.
Yeah.
So,
and the body, I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
So
it does keep the score.
It 100% does. For every cell in your body, there are 10 pieces of bacteria in your gut. It's like a 1 to 10 ratio. We're effectively more gut bacteria than we are human cell.
Yeah.
And 80 to 90% of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And the gut's everything from your mouth to your anus. So when we're talking about anxiety, depression, mental health challenges, we often think about the brain. But the reality is that actually these neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And if they're not being made, they cannot be released. So when we have to think about what are these things, what are these steps we can start taking, why is the brain and the body so interconnected? Well, it is because of the gut and so much more that we don't really talk about or understand fully, especially in Western science. And so the first step before we can start to fix, I hate that word, or heal or repair the brain is actually starting to repair the gut. And the biggest destabilizers to gut health are stress and sugar.
So is stress basically multiplying the bacteria, or anyway doesn't let the gut do the job correct, so it's like an imbalance?
It's like a bi-directional relationship.
Yeah.
So stress, cortisol, stress hormone, the brain processes something it's scared of, a threat, danger. The brain doesn't know the difference between 400 Slack notifications and a saber-toothed tiger. It doesn't. It can only recognize threat as threat.
Stupid brain.
And so how dare you be 300,000 years out of date and not caught up with
haven't you learned? I mean, we have AI that reads the patterns now. Can you not read the patterns?
How dare you still look for saber-toothed tigers? Then we wonder why we have problems. So the brain recognizes a threat, and in response, it goes into fight or flight because that's what it used to have to do in order for us to survive. You come out of a cave, there's an ancient hunter-gatherer, there's a saber-toothed tiger, there's a butterfly. If you're like, wow, that butterfly is pretty, you weren't going to get very far. So the brain will automatically focus on the threat, and then it's fight, flight, freeze. And that's all it can do in that moment. So this is what happens. So that in that moment, you release cortisol, you release adrenaline, your body gets ready to fight or flight. What then happens then is the body recognizes the release of cortisol. So it becomes inflamed because cortisol creates inflammation. And so then the gut's saying, oh, wait, there's cortisol. We're inflamed. We better tell the brain that we're in a state of stress here and get the brain to help us survive.
Yeah.
And so then it creates this cycle of stress that we have to really intentionally break.
Yeah.
And so stress and sugar are the biggest destabilizers. The biggest predictor of good gut health is diversity of fruit and veg. And it's super boring. And we live in a time now where everyone wants to go and jump in an ice bath, take the next supplement, do another high rocks, wear a silk sleeping mask, whatever it might be. instead of just doing
The
what is
basics.
actually going to really move the needle on your health, which is doing the basics, doing it consistently, doing it repeatedly, and it's boring. It's not sexy.
So someone would argue that when you're in the process of heal, fix, whatever the word is,
Yeah.
it actually the nutrition and how you recover your gut health
Fundamental.
and it's fundamental to like because it's
Fundamental.
interconnected without
Because
necessarily.
your brain can't release it if it's not being manufactured.
Yeah.
And so when we're really stressed, the gut is in a state of what we call dysbiosis. It's inflamed, it's not working. The cortisol feeds the bad bacteria, so we become more inflamed, which sends the signals back to the brain. So you have to try and get that gut back under control. So first things first is biodiversity of fruit and veg. Then you can play around with supplementation, but there's no point doing that unless you're doing blood tests to know what you're actually deficient in, because you can make it worse.
Interesting.
So there's loads of like fake
I like that you're saying that
fads.
because I can't, with all that noise of the supplements around me, I can't keep up anymore.
Not until you're doing when you're nailing the basics, then I would say nail the basics and play with the 1%.
Yeah, I
So
like
if
that.
you're not getting 8 hours sleep, or 7 to 9 hours, depending on who you are, if you're not drinking enough water, if you're not eating fruit and veg, you're wasting your money on everything else. And this is only 80% of the time. Like the other 20%, there's no point living to 120 if they're a miserable 120 years. Like, of course, this isn't to be so regimented that you're always thinking about long term, but 80-20, like 80% of the time. And then nutrition, of course, movement. We know that movement
helps,
is more effective, is as, if not more effective than therapy in many ways.
Okay.
Individuals who exercise regularly recover faster and for longer than from depression than those just going to therapy. There's lots of interesting studies now because we were never designed to sit at our desks. Again, I'm going to also counteract this with exercise is not therapy. You cannot out barbell your trauma.
But it should be all in moderation, though.
Totally.
And I guess is the message here then not just over indexing or over obsessing over one thing, and it's like look holistically at your nutrition, the basics, movement,
and that
therapy.
can just be walking in nature. It can be yoga. It can be high rocks. It can be barbells. It should be done in a way that it isn't creating more cortisol all the time, because that's where a lot of people go wrong. So they throw themselves into the exercise and they're not recovering effectively, and so then actually it becomes stress-inducing in itself.
Or like extreme exercise where you're chasing a goal and you're like, actually, it's counterproductive.
But and again, it comes back to agency and control. Like you said, like so what are the things I can do when I'm going through this or burnout? Sometimes it's just one foot in front of the other. So sometimes it's one more healthy meal. Sometimes it might be 1,000 steps that day. Sometimes it's another hour device free before you go to bed. Very simple changes. Then they become habitual, and then all of a sudden it's 4 sessions a week, and it's eating well 3 times a day, 6 days a week. And it's actually having a good night's sleep on average 5 nights a week. You build it up slowly. But I always say it's like pouring squash into water. And at first you don't see any difference in colour or taste, but you keep pouring those little drops, and then eventually you get a whole different drink. And it's exactly the same with our mental health.
I love it. And you know one other question I want to make sure we get out, because actually I was asked by my colleagues to make sure I ask you.
Okay.
It's like
colleagues.
We often focus, when we talk about burnout, we talk about the recovery. So all of this part, where do you start from, right?
Instead of avoiding.
Yeah, and it's like the honeymoon phase, the sustainable high energy performance.
Yeah.
How do we do that? That's where I want to focus the rest of our time until our time runs out.
I love how you try and keep getting these quick, like, give me the magic answer, Bianca. This is why you're here.
But because you know why? That's how our brain is wired. That's how I receive the questions from others as well. And clearly we're all wired to want the fixes, the answers.
Yeah, we live in a society now where I'm like, oh, here you go. Here's a magic pill. Here's a supplement.
Okay, let me phrase the question.
I can answer the question because it's a good question. And it's important because it is how people view it. So first things first, you have to really understand yourself in multiple ways, physically, mentally, spiritually. If you do not understand who you are as a person, how you want to show up in this world, how you want to move through this world, then how do you stand a chance for anything? Because you're out of alignment with who you actually are. So you're never going to feel energized. So we can put all of this physical implementations, and I can sit here and give you frameworks and give you tips and tools, but ultimately that's all irrelevant if you don't know who you are. So first off, you have to go away and really understand yourself. Then you have to be very honest about your limitations. Stop trying to do everything all at once. I fundamentally believe, people say you can't have it all. Yes, you can. I 100% wholeheartedly believe you can have it all and you can have it all at once. But you have to be realistic about how you're going to get it.
Yeah.
So you cannot go 110% across every single area of your life. So instead of trying to do 110, how about you just do 85? And to the ambitious driven person, that feels like, well, 80.
What? I'm not going
Oh
to
my
be
gosh,
perfect?
I can't do like my absolute best.
Yeah.
Well, no, but then what if you could do 85 every single day for the rest of your life in everything? And this is, it's easy for me to say this now, 10, 11 years. Oh, I lost my dad 8 years ago, but I guess I've been on this journey for a lot longer than that, because I started it before I lost him. And now I'm in a place where I run a startup. I can do a 90-hour working week. I train 5-6 times a week. I eat well 80-90% of the time. I get 8 hours sleep every single night, unless my dog decides otherwise sometimes. But I understand, okay, this is my operating system. This is what I need to do. These are my upper limits, my lower limits. I know if I go below this amount, I'll feel really bad. I know if I can get this amount, it's optimum. If I fluctuate between these two places consistently, I know I'm moving towards my goals. People often try and go extreme over consistent.
Yeah.
They want to do a high rocks. They want to run a marathon.
Yeah, you're right.
They want to read 10 books. Extreme, extreme, extreme. Set yourself up for fail.
Yeah.
Consistency
I love it.
over intensity.
I love it. Yeah. And I guess that's what you're doing with HumanOS. And the first step that you said, know yourself, you need the people to know yourself, whether it's self-awareness and self-monitor or the coaches you provide. Because I think the biggest trap for me where I say is like a lot of companies give all these amazing tools, like the Headspace or like the other tools. And you're like, I don't think I've never used them because I don't even know where to start from.
Yeah.
So I love how you're changing that narrative and you actually have the people also to support.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to.
Navigate.
Trying to.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, whether on the sustainable high performance advice or anything else?
I think it's just invest in understanding yourself. Like, a coach is a luxury. There's amazing books out there. There's podcasts like this. We live in a world where we have so much high value information for free. So making the use of that information, like switching the social media for something that you're learning, like something like this, being compassionate with yourself on that journey. You're not going to get it right. You're not going to be perfect. You're a human being. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to hurt. Things are going to go wrong. That's okay. Like, really try to speak to yourself how you speak to everyone else. There is no more important conversation than the one between your two ears. And then coming back to that curiosity piece, I guess. So know yourself, be compassionate to yourself, and be curious.
Thank you. You give me very calming energy. And what I'm keeping from here is like, be kind to yourself, give space to yourself, and tune in.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm taking.
Okay.
No, thank you so much.
Got called calming.
You are. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.